Hello, everybody, and welcome to Self-Publishing Insiders. My name is Jim Azevedo, and I'm the marketing guy here at Drafted Digital. And today, it's my pleasure to welcome my buddy and co-conspirator here, Nick Thacker. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So, for those of you who don't know Nick, he is the vice president of Drafted Digital's Author Success Division. Author Success includes bookcovers.com and author email and probably some other stuff in the future, huh, Nick?
Gosh, don't scare me. I hope so, but I hope definitely future, not this week.
Right. Can you explain your role a little bit for people who, maybe they don't know that Draft Digital has an Author Success Division?
No, absolutely. It is very new, so it's not a surprise if anyone's not heard of it. Basically, I work, for Drafted Digital, part of the company, just like anyone else here. And what you all know that Drafted Digital has done over the years is provide the best distribution, the best customer support for authors' books. So you upload a book. We don't take any money from that. We don't charge for that. We only receive a royalty if you make
Right.
it so. And so we decided we wanted to offer services to authors. But the requirement was, the mandate was, it has to be done with just as much integrity and just as much ethical, kind of above board as Drafted Digital has always offered. So we decided to start this new division called Author Success that's going to have services, products for authors that we will sell. So that's where Author Email came from, which is a platform that I built years ago and sold to Drafted Digital, how I became a part of Drafted Digital. And then most recently, bookcovers.com, which used to be called self-bookcovers.com.
Yeah.
We acquired that company, and I've been building it and relaunching it and dealing with it since.
Yeah, well, bookcovers.com and self-pub book covers, its predecessor was like this pioneering marketplace for pre-made book covers. They did such a fantastic job, but it got a little dated, and so part of what book covers purview is just kind of modernize that user interface and make things easier, not just for indie authors out there, but also for the artists themselves, these professional cover designers who have signed up for the service. And from what I understand, Nick, they can create their own like marketplaces within the marketplace to sell their covers.
Yeah, it's a two-sided marketplace, which is just corporate speak for there's two different customer bases, if you
Yep.
will. There's authors and there's artists. And we, bookcovers.com, are providing a connection between those two entities. To put it simply, if you're an author, you can go find a pre-made book cover. We have the most of any pre-made book cover marketplace in the world. We have over 160,000, I think, right now, maybe 150,000. So it's a lot to go through. My job, of course, is to make that easier to go through all those, the
Yeah.
discoverability, the search, all that. That's what I'm working on now. The other side of it is the artist. So authors aren't just looking for covers necessarily; they might be looking for their favorite cover artist. Um, so yes, you can have a storefront as an artist. You can go on and kind of put your shingle out as an artist, and you have your own cool little store. Right now, it's very simple. It's got a profile, a little banner, image, and then all your covers. And I'm working on ways to even further filter through that, so that if you're an artist, you can go and show certain covers you like the most, or certain categories you want to call attention to, or if you just design horror and psychological thriller, you could have two different categories right there that show your covers. So there's all sorts of things that we can do with it, but that's the premise of the marketplace. Is it is a marketplace where we connect authors with artists and or a cover that they love.
Okay, cool. So we have a lot to talk about. So several months ago, actually, maybe it was a year ago or more, I was going through the book covers website and I was, reading through the blog that you created there, Nick, and I just found this amazing content about how to choose the perfect book cover for your work, for your book. And then we turned that into an article for the WriterCon conference, and WriterCon's magazine, which is, I believe it's called WriterCon magazine. So that's what I want to talk to you today, because you might think like I just need a book cover that fits my story, but there's so much more that goes into choosing the perfect book cover. There's so much more, and thanks to you, like it was to me, it was eye opening. I thought it was really thought out, and it flowed from point to point to point, and it really not only made me think about cover design more practically, it was truly it was eye opening for me. So I want to dive into that, Nick, for our viewers here because there's a lot to talk about. But then we'll get to some author questions or viewer questions here. So you know, when you started your article, Nick, you started right out of the gates. You said, what makes a book cover the best? And you talked about broad appeal and targeted attraction, which I thought was an interesting way to start it. Like when you choose the best cover image for your book, you want it to have broad appeal, but you also want it to have targeted attraction. So how do you do both?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that's why I started with that. That's the question I want to answer for authors.
Yeah.
And when I present this in person, which I will be doing at WriterCon, I believe this year in Oklahoma City.
Excellent.
There, say hi. It's a great conference. Anyway, this is the challenge with, we're talking about art. We're talking about how is a book good? How is a book cover good? How is this painting good? So there's so much subjectivity there. Do you like it? That matters. Do you not like it? That matters. What we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, and what artists that design book covers are hopefully trying to do is provide a little bit of objectivity. And so you as the author need to provide that objectivity when you're looking for a book cover. So you're taking something very subjective, this art, and you're trying to apply some objective principles to it. And so that's what this article is about. And that's basically what I talk about when I say broad appeal and targeted attraction. You can like a book cover, but if it doesn't sell your book or it doesn't prevent the sale, or if it prevents the sale of your book because it's not on genre on point, then it's not a good book cover, right? So when I say good, I'm not referring to the quality of the art. I'm referring to whether or not it does its job. This is a marketing piece, right? This is a piece of art, yes, but we're using it as part of a book package. So you have your cover, you have your description, your blurb, your sales, your ratings, your pricing. All of that is part of the book package. And I believe the book cover is probably the most important one because it's the first thing that a potential buyer would see. So that's what I'm trying to dig into with this. The broad appeal is basically you're trying to catch the eye of potential readers. However, not all readers, right? We're not trying to make this attractive for every reader on the planet because some people read Brandon Sanderson and some people read Nora Roberts. Sometimes people read both. The point is your book is going to live in a particular category on a particular site, whether it's the Smashword store, Amazon, whatever, and it's going to be in a particular genre with particular subgenres attached to it. So wherever that book lives, that's what needs to be the appeal you're going for. You need to attract those particular readers who are browsing that potentially browsing that page. And so I know that sounds like a lot, but it really is. It's great. It kind of limits. It builds a box around what we're trying to do here with this subjective art. So if you start there, if you start with, well, where is this book going to be positioned? Literally, where am I going to sell it? Then you can start to answer that question a little bit by saying, well, it's a horror book. So go look at Amazon's top 100 horror or even the subcategory within that you're really going to be in and see what those covers look like. Are they all dark and brooding or are they all light and airy? Start using some descriptors, adjectives like that to describe your book. And then if your book is light and airy in a sea of dark and stormy, your book's going to stand out in a bad way. It's probably not going to sell because you're not going to match the reader expectation when they come across that book.
Okay. So, and with that, what are some of the pitfalls that you see that authors just commonly make when they're choosing their covers?
Yeah, the biggest one is that going back to the subjectivity, they like this piece of art. This is a cool piece of art. Or, I always say this as kind of a joke, tongue in cheek, but it happens. My 9-year-old, niece painted this picture and I just love it. And so I'm going to put it on my book cover. We love your 9-year-old niece. That goes on your refrigerator. That doesn't go on your book cover. That's not going to sell your book. It's going to prevent the sale of the book. And I've said this before. I even haven't said it in the article. But I believe the only thing a book cover can do is potentially prevent the sale of a book. No one buys a book based on the cover. They might buy it based on the name. If your name is Stephen King, it doesn't matter what the cover is, no matter what's inside, they're going to buy it because they love Stephen King, right? But no one is going and shopping the cover out section at Barnes & Noble and saying, okay, because that cover is so beautiful, I don't care what the name is on it. I don't care what it's about. I don't care what genre it is. I'm going to buy it. Nobody's doing that, right? It's just an art. That readers aren't buying art. They're buying a book, okay? And so the only thing a book cover can do is potentially lose the sale. So that's one of the biggest things I see authors saying, I like this. So therefore, it's my book cover. Let me slap a name and a title on it and look what you do. No, you're going to prevent the sale of your book. All you're trying to do with the cover is get them to click through, to read the rest of your book package. What's the price? What's the genre? What's the description? Does it match my expectation? Okay, great. I'm going to buy it. Or, okay, this cover led me down the path of thinking this was a psychological thriller, and I'm over here in the description reading its face on it. I'm not going to buy this, So that's all it's doing, is predicting sale.
It kind of reminds me, Nick, if like sometimes you gotta make a hard decision in your writing, like, oh, this, like, I found a perfect sentence at the end of this paragraph. I love it. It's poetic. It just works. But then you realize, but it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow from this paragraph to this next paragraph. So you have to make some hard decisions to kind of maybe cut some things out from time to time, it sounds like. Just real quickly, I want to let people know that, like, Nick was having trouble with his internet access, and so we had to find a spot in a coffee shop, I think you were at, Nick, to find some internet, some reliable internet access. So if there's noise in the background, people, we apologize for that. We understand.
Yeah, very sorry. It was I was in here for an hour and it was very quiet.
It's hey, we were happy to have you here. So let's keep it going. All right. So talked about pitfalls. The next thing, and this is the part of the conversation I was really looking forward to getting to, Nick, and it has to do with fitting genre conventions and how do you determine genre conventions and whether you have to be rigid when you're choosing a book cover to fit your genre, to speak to your potential readers out there. Can you kind of define what genre conventions are?
Yeah, absolutely. This is straight from the article. Here's the goal here with this before I even dig into it. You're trying to subvert the expectation inside the book. So we're all artists here. Like we write these books and we're trying to subvert the expectation in a good way. We're going, I'm going to surprise the reader. I want to surprise everybody by how what I've done with this genre and just turned it on its head and subverted that genre. We don't want to subvert the genre on the book cover, right? So just to be clear, like, yes, subversion of the expectation is great inside the book, in the pages of the book, or not, or you can just stick to the tropes and write, to market, and that's fine too. That sells. We don't want to do that with the book cover. So how do we define it? How do we actually look at genre conventions and decide, does this fit or does this not fit? And there's three ways that I determine the genre conventions. It's very simple, and you can do this. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be an artist. It's really as simple as paying attention to what the genre is doing. And the first way is to research popular books. I mentioned I like Amazon because they do a good job of putting they put 100 books, maybe it's 50 between two pages of the top sellers within every subcategory or subgenre on Amazon. And so you can literally go there, find the place your book is going to live in, and go find what those look like. That's your genre convention. So you research the popular books, go find the best sellers, throw out the anomalous results. So if somebody gets a book club feature deal and their book just has a cover that stands out, against all the other ones, but it's number one or two in that subcategory because of the promotion.
Yeah.
You can throw that kind of stuff out, but see what the literal sea of images you're looking at. What do they look like? What color are they? Do they use big blocky font, typeface styles, or do they use serif, the swirly fonts like script font for romance, for example? Personally, I'm in thrillers, and so a lot of times in mine you'll see big blocky titles and big blocky author names. So I would be smart or wise to choose that for my own book covers. That's one way to find that stuff. And I mentioned a little bit about this. The second way is to analyze those key elements. So typeface is one of many elements on a cover. The color scheme is an element. The mood and the tone. These are the adjectives that you would use to describe those covers. Are there characters on your cover or are there not? If you're in sword and sorcery, you probably want to have a dragon or a sword or some kind of sorceress looking imagery. If you're not, if you're in Regency romance, you want a pretty girl in a dress, right? So these are where the stereotypes can help us a lot. But literally describe that for your own book. Go into that genre and find what are those key elements, and what are authors doing or what are artists doing in that right now that's popular. And then the third thing is, keep in mind that these trends do change. So do this regularly. Regularly meaning once every 6 months. I don't think it's important to change your cover. I don't even think it's important to change your cover necessarily every 6 months. But every year, certainly you want to say, well, On my cover, for example, Running Man is a big deal. He's either running away or running toward the camera.
You mean the dance from the 80s?
The dance from the 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely not that, right? If you put that on the cover, that's going to send the wrong message. But a guy running away from or toward the camera is very popular, or was very popular. It's kind of falling out of favor a little bit because we've all done it. And so now you're seeing a lot of, at least in my sub genre, you're seeing a lot of the symbol. For example, the biohazard symbol I have in one of my covers, and then the blocky text on top and bottom. And that symbol's generally positioned the top third or the bottom third. So rule of thirds in photography, that applies here as well. So pay attention to that kind of stuff and regularly go back through these genres that you're in and determine, hey, is my book cover still lining up with this genre, or do we need to make some changes? Can we alter this in a certain way to kind of refresh it a little bit? And this is, I can't help but do kind of a shout out to bookcovers.com. We offer book covers that are pre-made. You can add your own text to them. You can change, once you purchase a cover, you own that unique cover for the rest of its life. No one else can buy it, and you can change it as many times as you want for free. You don't have to pay again. So do this with that cover. Now, the imagery itself, if you decide that needs to change, you can find a new cover, but we offer covers as low as $35. You can find a $35 book cover on our site. And if it fits your genre and fits these conventions, you can literally pay $35 every year and change your book cover if you want. Again, I'm not saying you have to do that, but look at your.
I wanted to bring up Brenda's. Sorry, Nick. I wanted to bring up Brenda's. She asked this, or she said this earlier. So Brenda's asking, for those of you who aren't watching and are listening to the podcast, Brenda said, "Talk about pricing, please." So we might as well kind of cut to that. But you said, Nick, that for as little as, did you say $35?
$35 US dollar. We are when I was doing the business plan for this and doing a lot of research, I determined there are really three pricing tiers for book covers. And I'm not talking about custom covers because those can be anything. Those can be, they can run the gamut. Although that kind of fits in here too. But there's the low tier, which is your Fiverr marketplaces, where you can get a book cover for $10, $15, $20, $25. Then there's the mid tier, which is kind of $35 up to maybe even $250 to $300. And then of course your high tier is where a lot of your custom work is.
Yeah.
And so we are positioned in that mid tier, and it's kind of on the lower end of the mid tier. You find a lot of covers for $40, $50, $60, which really isn't that much. As an author, you're investing in the success of your book. You should have something professional, right? You should try to find something that's professionally designed, but you don't have to spend $500 on that book cover. So that's sort of where we land. To answer your question specifically, Brenda, is you're going to find a lot of things for $50, $60, and a lot of it in that range, 50, 60 to about 150 is kind of our sweet spot, I think.
Okay. Hey, Nick, I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned before. When you're talking about book cover elements, I think this is really important. And if I was hearing you correctly about all the different elements on a book cover, it's kind of like the book cover is both marketing and content, right? Because as a reader, if I walk into a physical brick and mortar bookstore, or even if I'm browsing online at Apple Books or Barnes and Noble or Kobo or Amazon, I'm hit with this deluge of books and book cover images. And from what I understand, I've read research on this before. There's a report out of MIT a few years back that I found that said that readers make a decision not in 30 seconds, not even in 15 seconds, but I can't remember the exact figure, but it was literally like this, like the snap of a finger, the blink of an eye. It was really quick when a reader can determine if that's a professional quality image, and not just professional quality, but the elements on that cover image. If they speak to me, like you said, I instantly know, this is a thriller, or this is a fantasy. So that stuff is just super, super important.
Absolutely. We're talking about sales psychology here, but we're also talking about just human nature. And again, to be clear, the decision they're making, looking at a book cover, isn't, am I going to buy it? It's, am I going to click through whatever platform I'm on, whatever store I'm on, to see if this actually matches the expectation I have of what that book cover tells me it's about, right? And so when I tell authors this too, this gets into a little bit deeper in this conversation probably, but just real quickly, like this gets into authors who say, well, I have to describe what my book is about on the cover because they make this snap decision. So, okay, it's sword and sorcery, but there's also a damsel in distress. And there's also, 3 side characters that are really important to the structure of the later half of the book. So they have to be all on there, like the hobbits. You don't have to do that. You don't have to throw everything in the kitchen sink onto the front cover, right? The snap decision they're making is just, okay, this is Sword and Sorcery. I like Sword and Sorcery. My next read is going to be Sword and Sorcery, so I'm gonna click through and see if this is actually about something I'm interested in. That's where you might put some of these important elements in the book description. Samwise Gamgee is going to help, get to the Mordor place and throw the thingy in the fire. Sorry, it's been a while since I've read that book. Anyway, no, joking aside, that's where you would put some of the detailed stuff. You don't have to jam it all onto the cover. But going back to what you're saying, Jim, absolutely. Split-second decision here, but the decision isn't whether or not they're going to buy the book. It's whether or not they're going to click through to continue the research and that buyer's journey. That's all we're talking about, right?
Yeah, from the cover image to the book's description. Okay, got you. Let me bring up a question
I
here.
do want to say too, with Brenda's
Please.
follow-up question, I find it hard to believe that the cover will sell the book. That's what I'm saying. It won't. The cover will not sell the book. The only thing the cover is going to do is potentially prevent the sale of the book, right? So that's a key difference. The only thing the cover is going to do, if it's working, is get that reader to click through. And then whatever that through is, whatever that page they land on, that's going to sell the book. That's called the book package. And Amazon has spent trillions of dollars lining up the sales page and picking the buy button color and making sure that that's all going to work really, really well. So your job as the author is to make sure that you get them to that page. And if your book cover isn't working, they're not going to get to that page. If your book cover is working, they're going to get to that page. But the cover alone, that's not going to sell your book. Absolutely.
Okay. I want to get to a couple of author questions here, but first, I had a follow-up question for you, Nick. It's important to follow genre conventions, but I'm an author. I don't want to be stuck into a box, Nick. I'm a creator. I'm a creative person. I don't want to be told what to do and follow some trope. When is it okay, or is there ever a possibility to be the exception to the rule to stand out a little bit more, or is that just no? Do you just not do that?
It depends on your goals, man. I consider myself a hobbyist woodworker, and I want to put the emphasis on hobby. No one's buying the crap that I'm making in my garage. Okay, I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it for myself. I do it because I love it, and because hey, I need a hobby. But it's not my intention to sell the blanket ladders that are all janky with like weird little holes in them that I haven't quite chiseled the right way. If you want to design a book because it's a labor of love and it's your passion project and it's your hobby, and you never intend for anybody to buy it because it's for you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that's a beautiful endeavor and a great hobby, and everyone should have something like that in their life. But if you're on this call and you're an author thinking, I bet there's somebody out there who would buy this, and I might even be able to make a little bit of money doing it, then all of a sudden you've just made an economic decision, and that book cover needs to do its job, right? Because it's got an economic job, and that is to get people to click through so that they can buy your book.
Okay.
And so for that reason, I would say, yeah, if you have any expectation or hope or plan to sell one copy of your book, pick a book cover that lines up with the genre convention. Don't make it your art project with your 9-year-old niece's painting on the top of it. Okay?
Gotcha.
Hope that helps. Yeah.
All right. Going to bring up a quick question here from author Tom McAuliffe. Hey, Tom. Thanks for joining again. Tom's got a good question here. Tom asks, which is more important, the way the cover looks on the bookshelf in the bookstore or the way it looks as a post-stamp sized image on Amazon?
I'm going to go with the latter. It's got to look good as a postage stamp on Amazon, because if it looks good on a postage stamp on Amazon, 99 times out of 100, it's going to look good bigger, right? So you obviously design it bigger and shrink it down. This is something an artist would be really good at doing. But you as the author needs to go. This is why bookcovers.com, all of our books are on a page with at least 5 or 6 in a column most of the time, and you can look at it on a mobile phone as well and see the same thing. They're small, right? Because it has to look good as a postage stamp. I could tongue-in-cheek, kind of answer and say, well, if your book is in a bookshelf in a real bookstore and it's actually cover out, then you're doing pretty well and probably have a traditional publishing contract, and you probably didn't have any say over what that book cover looks like anyway, so it doesn't matter. But the truth is, most of us are selling first online, whether it's, like I said, the Smashwood store, Kobo, or Apple, or Amazon. And those are all digital stores that are going to show that thumbnail size image. A lot of people are browsing and buying on their mobile phones, on their devices. So, they're this big. It has to look good as a quarter size of that screen. So yes, Start with the postage stamp. But the real reason is, if you make it look good on a postage stamp, you can blow it up to huge size and it's still going to look fine. So I would
Right.
start there and work my way up.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think one of the key takeaways there, Nick, is and Tom, is that I think it's like 90% of all books that are purchased, at least in the US, but 90% are purchased online. That doesn't mean that we're just talking about ebooks, we're talking about print books as well, people who are ordering print books. So like 80 to 90% of all book sales are being purchased online. So absolutely, positively, that postage sized image, lead with that. Lead with that. And then Tom, when you design that image, and as Nick was saying, compare your thumbnail sized image against the other images that are on the screen. You know, have that image on your computer desktop and then drag it onto a screen at Amazon so you can compare the size of your image to maybe the best-selling images in your genre to see if your image can go head to head with those best-selling images in your genre. And then like step back from your computer screen because you want to be able to like as you step back from that thumbnail-sized image, can you read the author name? Can you read the title of that book? Do things look clear? Because it really has to stand out and it has to look pro. But more than that, it has to look clear. All right, moving along here. Oh, oh, oh. Um, I think this was the part of your blog, Nick, that I enjoyed the most. I think I said that earlier about uh, different conventions, but the composition. Ensuring strong composition for book cover images. Can we talk about that? But more importantly, I guess to set a foundation for composition, just what is composition? What does that mean when it comes to book cover images?
Yeah, this is very simple. You've got different pieces that I've talked about, different elements, right? Design elements,
Yeah.
whether it's typeface or fonts, we often call them, or images, imagery, background textures. All these things are elements that go on the book cover. And composition is just a design word that means, do they all fit together, or does it kind of look like a mishmash, hodgepodge of things that don't really quite go together? So this is where it gets a little more in the design realm. A good
Hmm.
designer is going to be able to do composition better than lay people who don't design.
Okay.
But really, the secret here is all they're doing is making sure if there's a lighting source and you've got two elements that are normally not together, like you've got a picture, an image of a castle, and a stock photo of a guy holding a sword that aren't in the same image, and you're combining them. Do they look like they belong together? Is the lighting source? The lighting is the most important element of composition
Hmm.
for things like that, because you have a three-dimensional sort of image, right, where something's in the foreground, something's in the background. So
Yep.
the lighting has to reflect that, literally reflect if there's reflections, So things like that you got to keep in mind with composition. But this doesn't have to be a real deep dive science either. This is really just you look at a cover and go, yes, that works, or no, that doesn't work. If it's supposed to look like a mural of different images,
Hmm.
cool, great. Then you can do a lot because you can put a little border on each image and make it look like they're all different pieces that make up one whole. Chances are, though, you're not doing a mural type image. You're doing something that is one coherent piece, and so that's where composition comes into play. But it can go more than just get into more than just the imagery, right? The typeface now matters a lot. You put a shadow on the typeface because it needs to stand out a little bit. Push it forward in the scene, if you will.
Sure.
Or does it need to kind of hide within what we're doing in psychological thrillers right now, especially in the trad world, the Colleen Hoovers, that kind of stuff, is this typeface is really the only element on the cover, except for this kind of viney looking thing that crawls around. You guys, know what I'm talking about. I think Sarah Moss did this with the crown, all her covers. And so this is a really popular element, a popular composition style right now in cover design. All you need to know as an author is you're looking at a cover, and the first impression matters a lot here. This is going back to the same snap decision. Tom said 7 seconds, whatever. The point is, quickly, we're making decisions on whether this works or not as a composition. Is it well composed? The second one is visual clarity. Can I see all the elements? Is it
Yep.
kind of, we have to make it bigger to actually see what's going on? That's bad. You don't want that. And then third, the emotional impact, which is really hard to define in and of itself, but composition plays a really critical role in that emotional impact. So like I've mentioned words like dark and brooding. Those are emotional adjectives, right? So those are things that we'll see an image and we go, oh, wow, that's going to be dark,
Yeah.
which is fine because a lot of people love to read dark psychological thrillers, domestic thrillers. Those are selling really well. So dark is fine. but does your cover composition reflect that? What are the emotional trigger words that, and I don't mean trigger in a bad way, but we're triggering an emotion when you look at anything, right? Humans are pattern animals. And so we look at the emotional impact, and composition plays a huge role in that.
Okay. I want to get to another question from Tom that he brought up earlier that I skipped over, but I think now is a good time to bring it up. Tom's asked, is it me or is there a trend, but I think he means, is there a trend toward more illustrated covers as opposed to photorealistic covers? I also noticed that titles seem to be enlarged. What do you think, Nick? And does that depend on genre?
Yeah, I was going to say it just really depends on the genre. I think I know what you mean, Tom. If you're saying illustrated, not necessarily as just cartoon images, but illustrated as in not photos or AI generated stock photo type stuff. Then yeah, we are seeing a lot of that. I mentioned in my genre, I read action adventure thrillers for a long time. For years, we saw Running Man, or woman or whatever. But there's a real person, a photo of a real person, usually with a dark face, so that we can all imagine ourselves as the hero or heroine, right, running away from her to the camera. And now we're moving toward what I think you're describing as these illustrated covers, where it's more of like a stylized element, the biohazard symbol, somebody illustrated or drew a vector graphic of that thing. So yes, in that particular subgenre of thrillers, absolutely. But again, go to psychological thrillers. You'll see a boat on a placid lake, right? And that's a photo, right? The illustrated version of that or the painted version of that probably wouldn't work as well in psych thrillers. But if you're in, I actually have a few, I'm going to have 2 sweet hockey romances because it was a dare to write one. I started playing hockey.
Was that a dare? I didn't. I know you wrote hockey romance. I didn't realize you started as a dare.
I did. I started as a dare. I tried to keep my mouth shut, but one of my goalie, because goalies are weird, they started making fun of me. They found out I wrote thrillers, and so it was a dare. So anyway, so I have all these. I have 50 thrillers and 2, almost soon to be 2 sweet hockey romances. So it's really funny. And in sports romance, the illustrated covers, literal cartoon 2D kind of graphic images, are all the rage. I've designed mine using more of a 3D looking illustration, or my cover designer did. But I'm actually having him go back and redesign them as that kind of flat 2-dimensional illustration, because those are huge and that's what's selling. And so again, it all goes back to, you want your cover to not stand out. You want your cover to just reflect the genre convention. So you go click into your subgenre and see what's there. Are they all illustrated? Well, it's probably smart to look like one of those covers, because the reader's coming to that page going, I want to read something like that. And, you're going to be one of many clicks that day, and you may not, be the one that they buy that day. But I don't see books really necessarily as competing with one another, because if somebody finds a book that looks, for all intents and purposes, like a good sweet hockey romance and they love it, guess what they're going to do? They finish reading it, they're going to buy another one. So it's not like a car or a house. We buy one every 7 years or 15 years. People are buying a lot of books, guys. And so don't worry about not being the click this time. You want to not stand out. You want to look like you belong in that subgenre, whatever store you're selling.
Okay, so that kind of goes back to what we were talking about when we kicked off this conversation. Just do your research, check out the genre conventions and your particular genre. So Nick, when I was going through your article and the blog post on choosing perfect book covers, one area that you brought up that I thought was like, that's interesting that he's actually saying this, has to do with the concept of close enough for your book covers. What do you mean by the concept of close enough? Because it reminds me of my grandpa, like decades and decades ago, like trying to do stuff around the house. He was like, "Oh, hey, it's good enough. Like, just let it go." But I don't really think that's what you mean. So
yeah, this is
this concept of good enough.
Good enough for government work, right? That's what we always say. We're building something good enough for government work.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about close enough in really 2 key ways. The first is your book cover isn't your product, right? Your book is your product. Your book cover is part of it. So you need to just pick one and move on, right? Don't get hung up on it. I'm not saying just buy the first one that you find on a pre-made cover website. Certainly not. But don't invest so much time and effort and money into the idea of finding a perfect cover, because perfect doesn't exist. First of all, we all know that. We're artists. But also, you're wasting time. At some point, you need to publish the dang book and start writing the next one, right?
Perfect is the
That's
enemy
what
of done.
perfect is the enemy of done. Yeah. And the second big concept here is a little bit what I was talking about before. You aren't trying to sell every single thing that your book is about on the front cover. You're trying to get people to click to the next page so they can decide to buy it. And for that reason, close enough really means are you capturing the essence of your book by what's on the cover? So sword and sorcery, I keep going back to that. You got a dragon and some fire coming out of its mouth. Oh my gosh, guys, that's good enough. Okay, that's close enough. We know what the book's going to be. It's not going to be a psychological thriller, right? It's not going to be space opera. There's a dragon on the cover, or vice versa. If you put a spaceship on the cover, it's probably not going to be a sweet hockey romance. Okay, so you just got to get it close enough, because at this point, the buyer's journey, they're just going, "Oh, I like space opera. I want to see what this book is about, or I'm going to find my next space opera." So they're going to go to a page full of spaceships, whatever, planets, all that kind of stuff. All of these are just capturing the essence of the story at this point, which is just this is a space opera. And so, yeah, they're going to click through and go, okay, I'm going to read that description. I'm going to go back. I don't like that. Click the next one. They find your book. Okay, that's a cool spaceship. Click through. Oh, that's a really cool story. I didn't realize that sounds intriguing. I'm going to buy this one. So the idea of close enough is really just getting the essence of your story without being super critical about making it a perfect match. And very quickly, I love this story because I used to work in a marketing company. We sold websites to churches. And this is a perfect encapsulation of a committee. Churches are always committee run, right? And I had to work with the whole committee instead of just one purchaser. I had to work with the whole committee to design a logo. So this wasn't even a website. This wasn't even a book cover. It was just one little logo that they wanted. This element. Of course, we all know what the logo is. So the story is I sat down multiple calls with these people, great people, of course, but they didn't know how to design a logo, and I didn't really know how to coach them through it at the time. And so there were 9 people on the committee, and each one of them brought an element that they wanted to have in the logo. I don't mean reflected artistically in the logo. I meant literally in the logo. So the first guy, pastor, is like, "Wow, I like lighthouses. It's called Lighthouse." Okay. So big lighthouse, right? The next person down the line, "I like doves." So we had doves on the top. And so we go through. We literally have this monstrosity of a logo. That's the example of a person or committee trying to get something perfect. Okay. But obviously the logo was terrible. I don't think anybody ever. They probably looked at that on the website and went, "I'm never going to that church. That's awful." You don't want people doing that with your book cover. You don't want to have every single element on there. You just want to get close enough. You capture the essence of what the book's about so that they can click through and read on and hopefully buy it.
Yeah, we call committees gauntlets here at Drafted Digital, going through the gauntlet, death by committee. All right, so I'm going to bring up a question here from Linda French. I think this is a really good question, and maybe you can help us understand it, Nick. Linda asks, I heard fonts are copyrighted, so I can't use, say, Garamond on my cover without purchasing rights. Is that true?
I'm not sure exactly about the details of Garamond. It is owned by Adobe, I believe. And yeah, there are fonts where you need to acquire a license, and those licenses are not always easy to understand. You can use it on 100,000, productions. Well, is that production of you on a website, or so it gets really in the weeds. So what I tell authors, and what we've done at bookcovers.com, is thanks for the plug, Linda. I appreciate it. Get your $20 after the call. At bookcovers.com, we just made this easy. We said, hey, Google Fonts offers all of these fonts at commercial license. You can sell a book cover with these fonts on. So any book cover on bookcovers.com, if you click on it and you customize it, those fonts in the customizer tool that we built are Google fonts. And so you're safe as an author. You can take and reproduce that in any way you want, as many times as you want, in any medium format, because Google has made it clear that that's their license, that's their model. So if you're not designing on bookcovers.com, you're doing it yourself, I would recommend choosing a Google font. I mean, there's almost 1,000 of them, maybe even more now. You're probably going to be able to find one. You can actually use a tool by Google called Search and just say, what font looks like Adobe Garamond Pro? That's a Google font. And chances are you'll find something that's going to work just fine. That's a Google font that you can actually use. Shout out to Google. They made this a lot easier for designers, because I remember the days of searching for a font that I really liked, finding out that it was $200 and I could only use it on the website, all that stuff. I don't recommend going down that. There's probably no reason you need a custom font, especially because it's just the book cover. If we're talking about the print format and there's just this font that's super special, fine, but keep in mind that not everyone's going to have the same eyesight reading that book. And some fonts may look better on the page than others. If they're reading it on a digital device, ebook reader, Kindle, whatever, for example, they're changing the font anyway because they've got their own settings. So don't invest. This goes back into the concept of close enough. Just get something that looks pretty good. If it's Garamond that you like, that's just a serif type font specifically invented to look good on print media that's not newspapers. That's what Times New Roman was invented, or why. So, for example, go find something that looks like Garamond that's not Garamond, that's in the Google font library, and use that. You'll be good to go.
Okay. I wanted to go back to another point that you made earlier, Nick, and this is about making changes to your book cover image. And I think it's important to sort of underscore that this is one of the key advantages of being an indie author, your ability to go in and make changes, not just to your book cover image, but also to your manuscript. If maybe your readers are reporting back that there are typos within your manuscript. Um, but since we're talking about covers, let's keep it there. So you could, if you, I don't know, discover an error on your cover image or a typo, or maybe the cover image just isn't quite resonating with readers. When is it appropriate, Nick, to make changes, whether a minor edit to your cover image or a major edit? And how does it work at book covers? Can you continuously do this, or is there a limit? How does it work?
No, great question. So generally speaking, broadly speaking, if you've got a mistake on your book cover, usually you reach out to the designer and say, "Can you fix this mistake? This person has 7 fingers, whatever." And I would probably push on them a little bit to say, "Hey, like, this is something you didn't catch. Can you fix it for me free of charge?" Sometimes if there's just a modification, something that you don't like, you'll pay them a little bit, $25, $50, $75, whatever, and see if they can change that element for you or change the color of their hair. That's one we get a lot as a request. When it's something like the typography, you can actually change that on bookcovers.com as many times as you'd like. So you can't change the image, right? That's just a flat image. So you pick it once, and that's what that is. And as I said, if you really want to change it later down the road, you can have a modification request. You put in a modification request. But for the fonts, for the type, the text, I should say, on the image, you can go back through once you've purchased a cover design. You can go back through our customizer tool as many times as you want. What we do right now is it looks like you're buying it again. You actually go through checkout, but it's a coupon is applied, so it's free. It's $0 every time. So you buy it the first time. Let's say it's $99, and now you own that cover, and you can go through our customizer tools many times as you'd like. We keep a history of it, so it's like an individual order every time. So you can actually go back in time and see, well, I made a mistake. I like this one instead. One of the things you can do with our customizer tools is really cool. This was not something you could do back in some book covers days. Is download your fonts, like your type. So let's say you lay out your book with a book. You lay out your book like this. Can't do it right. There we go. And you like the style you've got for the title and the style you've got for your author name. And your author name, believe it or not, that's a brand. So if you haven't put any thought into what that brand looks like, maybe do it. But you've got that brand now that looks a certain way. You want to keep that for all of your series, which is a great idea. You can download what's called the BCD, book cover design file, and it's just a little piece of JSON, which is code, and you can re-upload that BCD file for another later down the road.
So that makes it easy. I didn't know that.
Get your text. Yeah, it's really cool. So it's going to have if you just put the word title, put the word author name, but you design it the way you want, then you upload it onto a new book cover design. Let's say you buy another cover that's $75 or whatever, then you own that image as well. You upload the BCD file. All of a sudden it says title and author name the same way it was for the other books. So it's just a really fast way of applying your template to an entire series of books that you would buy through bookcovers.com. But to answer the question, you can change that as many times as you'd like. And we're making that easier. So right now, like I said, you have to go through a checkout process. The plan long-term will be to not have to go through the checkout process, but it doesn't cost any money to do it after you've initially purchased the book.
Okay. And I want to remind our viewers out there that if you go to bookcovers.com, everything that we're talking about right now, it's covered in detail on the bookcovers.com blog post. So go to bookcovers.com, check out the blog post, and you will find all of these. I have to say, Nick, these excellent posts that you've written. to really describe and explain all of this in detail, but it's
Thank you. Yeah.
extremely readable. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, to
Um,
be clear, just to clarify a little bit, Jim, like the
yeah.
blog that we're talking about has some posts just like what we've been talking about today. So how do you pick a book cover? What's the design? What's composition? There's also documentation in a separate spot on bookcovers.com site. It's /docs. And that goes into gratuitous detail on how to actually use our system, how to actually go
Okay.
through and find and so that's more of like the tech support side. We also have an author FAQ and artist FAQs, just a real quick, policies on AI, policies on, privacy, things like that,
Hmm.
where you find that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, these 3 different places all live on bookcovers.com, and I'm planning on putting a lot more blog posts up in the future that both talk about some of the tech side, how do you actually do this on our site, but really the conceptual side, what we talked about today. How do you pick a book cover? How do you define something that's very subjective? So yeah, thanks for calling that out. I like these posts as well. I think they're very helpful for authors. That
Hmm.
was the goal with them, was as an author, how do I choose a book cover? If I'm not a designer, we have to have something professional, but I don't have all the money in the world to pay $500 to an artist for 10 books in this series. So that was the purpose behind all this blog
Okay.
stuff.
We're almost at time, but I wanted to end by asking you, Nick, like, what's next for bookcovers.com? I know you just mentioned that you're going to be posting some newer content out there, but what's the next big lift for you guys? And I know you've been working your tail off since the acquisition of self-help book
Sure,
covers,
yeah.
but what's next?
So right now I'm in doing a lot of customer support. So I'm trying to interact and engage individually with someone, an author
Hmm.
who has a request. Of course, that means I'm the only person doing it, and it's taking a lot of time. But I want to do that because it's been really helpful to see. It's been really nice to see an author come through and go, "I hate all this. It's all new. I don't know how to do anything." And then kind of holding their hand a little bit and saying, "Listen, I know it's taken
Yeah.
a little while, but this is way better. We didn't have a choice. The old system was just falling apart. There was some security issues." But stick with us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So once I'm past that, we get into like what's the next feature, what's the thing we're going to build. I'm working on. We've got it almost built on the staging side right now, but I'm working on a way for artists to do exactly what I was talking about with that BCD file, so they can actually go in, design the text and typography as well, and then offer that to the author. So the author would purchase the blank image, but it would also have that template BCD file for the text, so they can just automatically just say, "I just love everything the artist did here." Plop. Now I just change the name and the title of the book, and we're good to go. So, and then it'll be a little flag on every cover product that has, hey, this one has a BCD file. So that way, artists or authors know eventually, assuming they know what a BCD file is, that's communication stuff. They'll know right away. I'm going to buy a book that has the text already, there. That I'm going to get as well.
Yeah.
And then the next big thing after that, Jim, we have this marketing director at Draft Digital who's just been hounding me to get an affiliate program set up. So I really like that idea, and that's super fun to me. Obviously, from a business perspective, it's a revenue driver for us.
You've got other priorities on your plate.
But right now we do. But that's kind of the next big one that I want to tackle is an affiliate program, because again, from a business perspective, it makes sense for us. But for authors, they already want to recommend bookcovers.com artists. They want to say, well, what's the name? How do I put it in a book? What's the right way to do it?
Yeah.
And so we can combine that with an affiliate program that says, hey, if you like this cover, here's a QR code. You can go find your own cover, or here's a link. It's my affiliate link, and I'll make a little bit of money promoting bookcovers.com artists. So really, I want to push there. We've put a lot of effort into making the artists, which in again, network effects terms, that's the hard side of the market. We have to have people designing products. So we put a lot of effort into attracting great artists and getting great covers, adding tagging and things like that we didn't have before. Awesome. So what I want to do now is focus on the author side. How do we make that a lot better of a platform for them as well? So anyway, there's a lot there. I could talk all day about it, but I know we're.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. I know you guys have been working hard, and that there's more coming. So kudos to you for all that hard work. I know you don't get to sleep very much, but we appreciate
I
that
got
hard
little
work at
kids,
book covers.
so I figure I can sleep when I'm dead anyway.
Which is why you're at a coffee shop, right?
That's why I'm at a coffee shop. Yep.
Okay. Hey, man. Well, I'm so happy that you joined us, Nick. I know you had a little trouble earlier with the internet connection. And again, to our viewers, thanks for sticking with us and your patience and understanding with
Oh my
that.
gosh, yeah, they're finally gone. By the way, it got a little bit better, hopefully. But the worst part wasn't that they were loud; it was that they were teenagers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. Come on, you guys. Did one actually pull a chair across the restaurant? Because at one point
Yes,
there was this.
yeah, very much so. And this isn't a huge place, it's a smaller place. So I don't know where she's taking this chair, but it's very loud in my ears. So
Yeah. I like how my
oh well.
my screen just froze. I'm like, can you still hear me?
I can hear you just fine, but yeah, you're definitely going like this.
Oh, well, I do that all the time. Anyway, I don't know what's going on. My camera's freaking out. So I'm going to end this show while it getting good. I wanted to remind our viewers, and you too, Nick, that if you could, like this episode, share, and subscribe to our channel, it helps us spread the word out there. If you're interested in seeing what our upcoming topics are and who our guests are going to be sure to bookmark dddlive.com, because once that page gets updated, it will tell you what the next topic and who our next guest is going to be. And finally, if you stumbled across Self-Publishing Insider's show today, and if you're investigating maybe self-publishing for the very first time, you can sign up for your free Draft to Digital account simply by going to draft2digital.com. Well, that wraps us up for this week. Nick, I again want to thank you for your time today. To all of our viewers out there, you guys, thanks. Thanks for joining us week in and week out. And for those of you who are new to Draft to Digital and new to selfpublishinginsiders.com, I saw some new names today. Thanks so much for trusting us with your time. Thanks for joining. We hope to see you again. We'll see you all here next week. Oh, before I forget, I mentioned this last week, so I'm going to quickly mention it again. Within the next couple of weeks, we are going to announce a program for print books. We're going to call it the DDD Print Summer Invitational, where it's not a contest. It doesn't matter if you've never published a print-on-demand book through DDD Print before, or if you've published dozens and dozens and dozens of books through the summer. If you publish a print-on-demand book through DDD Print, you have a chance to win some really cool publishing perks, like $50 credits toward author copies, or change tokens, and even credits toward a new cover image at bookcovers.com. So for those of you who are already DDD authors, stay tuned. You'll be receiving some email updates about that when that program launches. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really, really cool, and it's going to last the entirety of the summer. And one more public service announcement. Starting in July, it's the Smashwords sale, the Smashwords longest sale. It's our summer-winter sale, which is going to last the entire month of July. There's well over 100,000 books on sale, from 25% off all the way down to free. So there's just a ton of books and a ton of fantastic authors selling their books. So, all right, I talked enough. I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thank you.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created DDD Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draft2digital.com.